Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Continuing lessons on the book Ma'alim fi tariq talab al-ilm, Shaykh Sadhan, hafidhullah ta'ala. Last week he was discussing some of the etiquettes regarding attending classes and those who do not attend from the youth. And he says, na'am, no doubt, there is no doubt that whoever replaces the gatherings of knowledge and benefit and remembrance with gatherings of evil and idle talk has become a fool, if not one of them. For the one who is intelligent and wise is the one who makes most of his hours of his life in that which is benefit. And this is why some of our Salaf would say, if a day passes without me increasing in my knowledge, may that day not be blessed for me. And some of them were miserly with their time. If someone spoke to them in useless way, they would say, look at the sun. Do you see it? If it moves by the command of Allah and never slows down, it moves by the command of Allah and never slows down. And he told the person then, I will hold back to talk to you if you're able to, hold back the sun. Otherwise, he would leave him. And he says, therefore, we should spare no effort in acquiring knowledge, in sitting with scholars and learning from what Allah has taught them before we lose them, and before we regret having neglected to live together with them, only for them to depart from us, while our morals and our knowledge and our jurisprudence or fiqh is very low. And he says, now, in order to consider this, we must look at the following benefits. Here are some ways he's going to mention now to benefit from halaqat ilm. Al-amru awwal, the first of them, al-ikhlas, sincerity. And he says, one, our going to studying circles or halaqat ilm, or sitting in them, and our returning from them, should be purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, free from any stains and taints of hypocrisy or seeking fame. A little of this is fine, but Allah is kind to His servants. And what does he mean by that? If someone's intention is infected with a little bit of this, inshallah he's safe, because it's a human difficulty to purify your intention. Then he says, the intention may be affected by the love of reputation or love of fame or love of showing off. However, if the servant strives, hates this quality, and calls upon his Lord humbly, submissively, then Allah is with his servant's good opinion of him. And if he is good, then he's good, and if it's bad, it's bad. It means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in accordance with what we think of him. فَإِنْ كَانَ خَيْرًا فَخَيْرٌ وَإِنْ شَرًّا فَشَرٌ. So here he's talking about coming to the classes. The first what we need is ikhlas. Ikhlas. Because you're not coming for money or fame or name, you're coming for Allah's sake. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he encouraged us to come to the classes. He didn't attach money to it. إِذَا مَرَرْتُمْ بِرِيَاضِ الْجَنَّةِ فَرَتَعُوا. If you pass by the gardens of paradise, this is what he called it, to take from his fruits. Sahaba said, قُلْنَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ مَا رِيَاضُ الْجَنَّةِ. What is the gardens of paradise? He said, حِلُقُ الذِّكْر, the circles of remembrance of Allah. So if we understand that the classes are like this, then this is the intention. Because it's not to come to gain anything else. But the human nature is that we want other than that because we're weak, so we strive against that. Then he says, in any case, intentions are susceptible to change, especially if they surpass their peers in achievements. And we must adhere to sincerity towards Allah and strive hard to remove our intentions, or improve our intentions, remove from our intention anything that will cloud it, or its clarity, or its purity. And if Allah knows that this is about a servant, that he's sincere in his intention to seek His face, then He will see for him, and nothing else besides that will please Him. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah says, those who strive in our path, those who strive for our sake, verily we guide into our paths, and Allah varies with those who are good doers. And then he says, and those who strive for us, we will surely give them our ways. What does this mean? What does it mean? Indeed, those who are good doers. Indeed, Allah is with the good doers, meaning some scholars have stated that a seeker of knowledge may encounter difficulty and hardship in striving to refine his intention, but he'll be rewarded for the effort he makes to strengthen his intention, because intention is a significant matter. And some of our Salaf, our pious predecessors, avoid the evil of their intentions by tainting that love of fame and hypocrisy. Then where does our situation come? It means if they struggle with their intention, what about us? So it's a must upon the student to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant his sincerity in all affairs and to make take the necessary measures to achieve it. So here we can see ikhlas is the number one driver to the classes and attending it sincerely. Because if someone is coming for fame or name or money, then soon you'll find him absent. Whereas the people who are real tulab ilm, they don't miss the classes, they will not miss it or leave it for years because they understand what they're gaining. It's not just the knowledge, it's the pleasure of Allah, the benefit of those classes, the surrounding of the gatherings of the malaika, the being in the gardens of paradise, being covered in the sakina of Allah. And in reality, when you come to the classes, it also removes a lot of the stress and worry you have in life. So this is the first way we can do that, fix our intentions. Al-Amr Thani, now the second one, Al-Hirsu ala huduri halaqat al-ilm. There must be eagerness and keenness to attend the circles of knowledge. He says by being consistent and diligent in attending classes, avoiding laziness and fatigue and boredom. The more a servant is keen, and Allah knows, the more sincere his intention will be. And Allah will open His blessings upon him, facilitate his affairs, and aid him in all his affairs. And we must not exaggerate the number of study circles we have attended, for ignorance is abundant while our knowledge is limited. And that's important, right? It doesn't matter how many you attended. فَإِنَّ الْجَهَلَ كَثِيرٌ وَالْعِلْمُ لِدَيْنَا قَلِيلٌ. Right? That the jahl, the ignorance is much, and knowledge that we possess is little. So they say that is why they say a person's grasp of what he knows is greater than his grasp of what he doesn't know. And he is ignorant of much, and the more he gains knowledge, the less the ignorance disappears, and so on. And whenever you are consistent in attending classes, thank Allah and ask Him for success and more. And know that this eagerness, were not for the grace and facilitation and guidance of Allah, the Almighty, your efforts will not have benefited you. And this is the reality. That's a good sign of Allah upon the person, a sign of blessings of Allah. The person has attended the classes consistently, because that person is coming to the messages all the time. And who are the 7 people Allah shades on al-Qiyamah? Rajulun, a man who's qalbuhum muta'alliqun bil-masajid, right? Someone's heart is attached to the masajid. That's just one of the benefits. Let alone the ilm. Man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilma. He's on a path to Jannah. And the ulama say shortest path to Jannah, talab al-ilm. So we need to pay attention to the fact that being eager to it is a good sign. The same way Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was very happy with Abu Hurairah being eager for the searching of the hadith. So it's important. If someone is eager, it's a good sign. Now the Shaykh shows us some examples of Salaf, how they used to be. And he says, for example, Abu al-Abbas, right? So Tha'lab Abu al-Abbas, واسمه أحمد وهو من علماء اللغة. He says about Ibrahim al-Harbi, one of the Salaf, ما فقدت إبراهيم الحربي من مجلس نحو أو لغة 50 سنة. He said, Tha'lab, I did not miss seeing Ibrahim al-Harbi in the Arabic grammar and language classes for 50 years. 50. And he says, look, brothers, what's the fruit Ibrahim al-Harbi gained? He became one of the world's imams and one of those whose knowledge was carried by travelers. And his knowledge did not come to him as inheritance, but rather through efforts and perseverance. And this was mentioned by Imam Dhahabi in the Siyar A'lam al-Nubala. Imagine, brothers, 50 years, the whole lifetime. This is what the ulama talk about munazama, when someone's attending classes consistently for the shaykh or the teacher and just benefiting. And you find this culture is happening, but this is an encouragement. 50 years. And then he gives another example where he says that, and how great and beautiful it is what Imam Ahmed said when it was said to him, or when عندما قال أبو حارث, when Abu Harith said, I heard Abu Abdullah say, knowledge is but a gift that Allah bestows upon whomsoever He loves amongst His creation, and no one attains it through his lineage. For if it were due to lineage, the people most deserving of it would be the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Means ilm is not a mirath, right? It's something someone gains. إنما العلم بتعلم الحديث. Knowledge is only gained by learning and studying. So here we can see many of the imams who became knowledgeable. Some of them they didn't come from households where they even were ulama. Some of the Salaf came from households of deviants. They became Sunni, someone else was Qadri, another one was Shi'i. So imagine, it's not about, where are you from, where country or lineage, you're going to get the knowledge. You're going to strive like they did. And to show us this, he gives the example, Imam Malik, and he's not the only one. Imam Malik's son Yahya, who had a son Yahya, Imam Malik, and he would leave the house with a pair of pigeons in his sleeve. Or جوز يعني من حمام, يعني some kind of like peanuts to give to the حمام. This is a better way to translate. جوز, like peanuts to throw to the pigeons. So Malik said, Rahimahullah, Alhamdulillah, الذي لم يجعل هذا علم ميراثا. All praise due to Allah who didn't make this knowledge inheritance. Malik, the Imam of Dar al-Hadith, Dar al-Hijrah, right? And his son wants to play, doesn't want to learn the Hadith. It's not the only one. Shu'bah, Al-Hajjaj, reads biography, same thing with his son. So they mentioned that the Salaf, they had that problem. Well, we know this. The furthest people from the people of knowledge is their own family. As the Nas, right? The furthest person from Ma'alim is Ahlu. Because they don't see him to be this way. But look how the difference between this. Although they mentioned Malik's daughter, she was a scholar or a person of Hadith. Right? So that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. He gives to whomsoever He wills. Like for Allah yuti man yasha. So here the Shaykh's trying to show us that the Salaf, if this is the reality with them, then the difference between this situation and ours, that we work hard, inshallah Allah will give us. Ikhlas, being eager with the classes, you can make it. And he mentions here that, and Askari mentioned, Abu Hassan al-Kharqi said, I used to attend Abu Khazim's sessions on Friday mornings without a lesson. So as to not to break my habit of attending lessons. Can you imagine that? Usually Jum'ah there's no classes. Right? Jum'ah morning especially because you're coming to the Jum'ah for the khutbah. So he used to come, كنت أحضر, I used to come, أحضر المجلس, I used to come to the Majlis Abi Kharim, right? The same place he used to sit, يوم الجمعة. And the reason only why is to not miss the عادتي من حضور. I don't want to break my habit of attending all the time, sitting there. So there's no class, he's still sitting there, just so you can keep the habit. You see, brothers, this is the salaf, this is how they used to be. So we need to try to pay attention to the mechanism, method, how they got to where they got. Right? Dua, ikhlas, tawfiq, and then look. So this is what the Shaykh's trying to highlight. The eagerness shows that the perseverance, the preference to give himself, even oppresses himself as much as he pushes himself as much as he can in accordance to acquire the knowledge and accustom themselves. Because as the poet said, the soul is like a child. If you neglect it, it grows up loving, right? To be wet nursed. And if you wean it, it'll be weaned. Means whatever you accustom yourself to, that's what it becomes. So then he continues, he brings the hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِتَعَلُّمْ. Verily knowledge is by learning. وَإِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِتَحَلُّمْ. And gaining forbearance is by practicing forbearance. And then he says, وَمَنْ يَتَحَرَّ الْخَيْرَ يُعْطَى وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ الشَّرَّ يُوَقَّى. And whoever is eager for goodness, he'll be given it. And whoever tries to stay away from evil, he'll be rewarded from it. And this hadith, Shaykh Al-Albani authenticated in Sahih Al-Jami'. And the first part is the shahid, very knowledge by learning it. Now, that's a great encouragement because some people may tell themselves, I don't come from a household of knowledge. So but then don't worry, then you have the ability to work. And to show us another example, he brings an example. He says, Wahab bin Jarir an Abihi. Warad an Wahab bin Jarir an Abihi, that he said, here it says here, I sat with Hassan al-Basri for 7 years and never missed a single day. I would fast in the morning and go to him right after that. So here, this is an example of Salaf. So 7 years attended his classes. And he says, لَمْ أَخْرُمْ مِنْهُ يَوْمًا وَاحِدًا. I never missed a single day. And then he says, example, Qatada. بدعامة السدوسي من أئمة التابعين. Everyone knows Qatada, the great scholar of Hadith and Tafsir. He said he was born with weak eyesight, or blind. Essentially, he was blind. And he was a student, right, from the students who studied with Anas bin Malik. And he says here, وَكَانَ طُلَابِ عِلْمٍ مُتَابِعُونَ. These scholars, right, and tabi'un used to go to Anas in the morning to seek knowledge from him, and evening. And when he would speak to them, the people in the morning, and they would leave, the people of the evening would come. And he would speak to them about the evening, people of the morning. Anas was late one time when the people of the evening were absent. So Qatada would speak to them about everything. A hadith, right? So he pretty much gave them the whole lesson that was supposed to come for them because Anas was missing that day. And he says here that when Anas saw that, how much good his memory was, and was amazed by his intelligence, he nudged him and said, "Get up, O blind man, you've taken all the knowledge that I have." And it's not the first time they said that to Qatada. Because they mentioned later on, he went to Sa'id al-Musayyib and he sat 7 or 8 days. And Sa'id said, "Get up and leave. You took everything I got." Imagine, this is Qatada. Imagine, this is how he was. So Sab'a ulama says it's not about how long you studied. So it depends on how you studied, but also this is tawfiq min Allah. So these kinds of scholars, of course, they existed, but the benefit we're taking is that Sheikh's trying to encourage us in attending the classes. This is what's important. Attainment, tahsil, comes from the thamarat al-juhud. It comes from the efforts of attending. And this is what the harvest you get. Right? This is the whole point. If you haven't sown and see a harvest, you will regret neglecting time of sowing, as the poet said. So the summary of this section is we have to try our best to attend the classes to make sure that we will not be lazy and to succumb to that laziness that's going to deter us. الأمر الثالث, the third one, الحرص على التبكير في الحلقة إلى الحلقة, eagerness to come early to the lessons. And here he said, do not delay, prefer it over others and make it effort, and make it and other things subservient to it, means coming to the classes. Do not neglect the circle whenever possible, especially the lessons we attend and the Shaykh we study with. By preserving and attending and being early, the benefit is more comprehensive and the gain is more widespread. And he mentioned narration from Sha'bi, although the narration is weak. Where did you get the knowledge? They asked him. He said, by denying the independence, traveling through the country, being patient like that, the patience of a donkey, and coming early like the earliness of a crow. Means they used to come early. That's the idea. والبكور كبكور الغراب, يعني you come very early. The narration has weakness, but the idea is that attending early. As-Sam'ani, he reports. So here's another story. He says, I used to hear the hadith of Abu Samad al-Fadl, and the door was closed to us. Then a man came and knocked on the door, and he banged and knocked violently. Abdul Samad said to one of us, get up and see if this man is one of the people of opinion, then open the door for him. But if he's a person of hadith, then don't open the door for him. And one of them said to him, isn't the person of hadith more deserving of having the door open for him? He said, no. So the people of opinion are more deserving because this is the work of the people of hadith. So why didn't he arrive early? It is not the work of the people of opinion, so they are excused. And so what he's trying to take from this is that if a person is saying they're going to study, in this case hadith, then they're supposed to come early. That was the sign of the people of hadith. They attend early. They don't come late. And the benefit the Sheikh's trying to highlight is that the setup, they used to come early. That was the sign of their sincerity and eagerness. And some of them, they would do it on purpose so they get closer to the halaqah and they can learn more and they can also get closer to the teacher. And this is just a benefit for all of us to try to attend as early as we can. This is just our own benefit. And he says here, Al-Iraqi mentions, Hafid Iraqi, from Murajjahat, that one of the reasons for preference amongst the hadith scholars is that the one who is close to the Shaykh differs from the one who is distant. The narration of the close one is preferred over the one who is distant because the one who is close is more attentive and closer to hearing the Shaykh and hearing the hadith. So time is Salaf, literally coming early meant you get the better quality of the lesson because you can hear it better versus the one who's further away who would miss something. Today, obviously, our things have become easier with the microphones and likes, but still coming early is preferable. وأمر الرابع, the fourth one, استدراك ما يفوت من الدروس, catching up when you miss of the classes. And this is important because everybody's going to be busy. Everyone has a schedule. So what happens when you miss? There's an etiquette for missing. There's just like an etiquette for attending. He said, do not neglect what you miss. A problem or emergency may arise, causing one of us to miss a lesson or a group. But if you are a regular student, be extremely careful not to neglect it. Make sure to make up for what you missed with your peers. And praise be to Allah, the recordings have become available. You repeat the lesson over and over, and this is a blessing from Allah. If you're a regular student and maintain a good attendance record, be sure to check for what you missed. A lesson is like a chain. If you miss a link, it will impact what comes after it and what comes before it. And so therefore, we should be like the Sahaba and Salaf, that they were busy and they had work. They would take turns, right? Narration of Umar al-Khattab in Bukhari, hadith number 89. Umar radiallahu anhu said, my Ansari neighbor from Bani Umayyah bin Zayd, who used to live at Al-Awari in Medina, and I used to visit the Prophet ﷺ by turns. So he used to go one day and I go another. When I went, I used to bring the news of that day regarding divine inspiration and other things, and when he went, he used to do the same for me. So Umar is a family man, he has business, he's working. So the day he's not there, the neighbor goes. So making tanawub, he takes, he gives, he takes, he gives. So this is how the student should be. Day or not day, you still follow the lesson. You have the live stream now, makes it easier. You listen to it on the way to wherever you have to go, or when you finish. And this is a benefit. Hafid ibn Hajar says in Fath al-Bari, volume 1, page 223, in this hadith is a benefit that a student should not be negligent in looking after the affairs of his livelihood. Right? Umar, he didn't choose between working and talab ilm both. He did both, but which helps the student knowledge, along with being determined to ask about what he missed on the day he's absent. So it's the student's job, not the teacher, to tell you what you missed. That's the dalil. Because Umar asked Rasulullah the next day, well, what was the hadith or ayat that came down? That's a bad etiquette. That means I don't care. You're supposed to ask this classmate to tell you what you missed or today with the recording. So your absence and your presence, inshallah, will be the same. If I'm missing, I wasn't only missing physically, not mentally. I'm there, but heart, inshallah. But it's very important because the Shaykh just mentioned, the class is like a lesson, it's like a chain. If you're doing a serious class, some durus, you can't even miss it. If you miss it, khalas, the whole ulum, or ilm you're learning has to be started. An example, the nahu. If you study nahu, some ulama say it has to be silsila, it has to be 3 days in a row. Or a week, whatever you're studying, you have to go in a row. If you miss one, you're gone because you have no idea. So the example of the studies like that, you can't afford to miss. So let's say you can't come, khalas, I'm live, listening live. But the problem you might find that because we have recordings, some people don't listen to the recording either. Because Shaitan will tell you, don't worry, listen to it later. And then you don't listen to it later, and you come and you ask questions, and you missed it. So that's not beneficial. Shaykh Uthaymin, Sharh Bukhari, he says, volume 1, page 253, it is permissible for a student or a person to agree with his companion to attend a lesson one day and his companions to attend the next. And when he brings what he heard, and this is in relation to people who have preserved memories, who memorize. As for our current time, the preservers and memorizers are weak. However, Allah has brought to us a substitute, all praise due to Him, tape recorders. So the recorders nowadays suffice from the needing for fixed rotation, for learning religious knowledge. So a person comes with his recorder, records the lesson, and then another person listens to what was recorded, and listens to the blessings of Allah. So that's Shaykh Uthaymin's advice. Right now it's recorded for us. So khalas, the excuse is gone. Before it'd be like, I didn't record it. And it's also be eager to share it with those who missed. But this is a key benefit. You miss, you still have to catch up. Then the Shaykh brings the next affair. Al-Amr Khamis, Ta'aliq al-Fawaid al-Kitab. Writing down the benefits in the book. And he says recording the benefits, if you hear in a book, or you read in a book, in the book, or you hear and you put it into the book, it could be in a book or it could be in a notebook. Right? Al-Kitab or fi daftar khariji. It could be either one. So some people write on the book, and some ulama prefer that, and some say get a daftar, separate notebook, put it in there. Both ways are there. And if a person is diligent recording and reviewing, then time to time, then Allah, inshallah, by Allah's permission, will develop a skill in speaking and preparation, and to remove the confusion. And this is also for reading. So now the Shaykh is going to advise us of how to do that. He says here, my reader, dear reader, what are you going to do? If you buy a book, do not bring it to your library without first examining it. And from this general examination, you'll learn the author's name, the topics the book contains by referring to the book's index. So when you get a kitab in a bookstore or you're buying it, you look at the ghilaf first, the front cover, and you look at the title, and you look at the author. And this is going to tell you what the book's about and also who's the author. And most of us, we know we judge books by the author. And if you don't know the author, then you judge by the title. And then you go open the other side and you look into the index. And you look in there to see what the book's about, what the headings, to see the benefits that are there. And he said you should also spend some time, much as time as you can, browsing through some topics. And you open it, take a look at how the author, he writes the book. Does he put down the benefits? How is it? Does he do, if it's a book of hadith, does he do takhrij or tahqiq? Or just takhrij? You have to know all this. Because you're not going to just buy the book. So he's telling us this is what you should be doing. He said you should also spend time. Then he says browsing gives you the ability to fully comprehend every book you buy. And one of us might be amazed at himself and may even accuse himself of being absent-minded. At times he buys a book once or twice. Or asks about a book that he has been sitting in his library for months. And this is a problem. You have the same book, 2 copies, 3 copies, because you bought it and you forgot you already have it. So how many books have been mentioned for some of us and we've denied having them even though we had brought them out and had them right in front of us in the morning and night. But by not browsing through them and not examining some of their topics, we have forgotten the original book. That's also why you should know which books you have or you don't have. Of course, it's a little bit different when it comes to taba'at. Taba'at is different, right? Which is the best taba'at? That's a little bit different story. So the earlier prints, new prints, right? That's the sha'n of tulab ilm. They're always getting the copy. You might have several copies of Bukhari because they keep getting new taba'at. Right? So that's different, right? At least you have one copy. Some people have multiple because they have different prints. But now the Shaykh's talking about how to record the benefits. And he says whether you're reading a book on a Shaykh or you're doing qira'ah hurra, your own free reading, what you do is this. He says if you read a book with the Shaykh or by yourself, be extremely careful to record the benefits you heard or read and stray and unique things that come across to you. So here's the fawaid or shawarid, benefits that are scattered, you gather them, and fara'id, what's unique. So this is what you write down. You don't write down everything. Some people, when they write the notes, they wrote down the whole copy of the book. What was the benefit? You already have the copy. You write down what you don't know. So you write down what you don't know. So fawaid, benefits you need. Shawarid, something in another book, until you put in that book. So you're reading one book, you found something, you put into this book. He's going to say, you put in that book because this is the topic. Or fara'id, unique. Only this book mentions it. Or this sheikh has a ta'weel on this hadith, or this sharh he gives, no one else said something like that. You write it. And then he says, if you're reading a book, for example, he gives the example, you're reading a book on Ru'a wa Ahlam. And let's say a book on, he says, you're reading a book on Ru'a wa Ahlam. You're reading a book on dream interpretation. And you have other books also, right? You read on different topics. Then the Shaykh says, when you're reading this book and you're bringing the benefits, right, from this book, if you read this book and then read other books you're reading as well, if you find benefits in other books about dream interpretation, you put them into that book you're reading. So you take whatever you find on another topic. If you have one book you're reading, it talks about dreams, it has a benefit, you put into that book about dreams because that's your book on dreams. So you put the benefits in there. So you take all those and you put into one copy. So be very careful to list the benefits from these books with page numbers only on the inside cover of the book. So the ulama say you open the book in the front page, and some people do in the back page, but it has the notes section. So some ulama, like Shaykh Salah al-Shaykh, he has a lecture. Some of us we know, it's called Student Knowledge in his books, right? Tulab ilm wa kutub, you can read it. And he also gives these advice as well. So they say you have the book, when you open it, the front page, you have a page of sticker, like a notes, and you have the fawaid, which page numbers, and if it's outside that book, you write down where is it coming from. For example, the Shaykh says, if you have written down, you write I'tisam, Ash-Shatibi, volume 1, page 121. See, Indur, I'lam Muqi'een, volume 2, blank. So it's like your own index of fawaid. And the reason why is that when you're reading, you have those benefits. Right? On this topic, see this. So it's like a guide. So when you want to talk about dreams, you open that kitab, everything's there. And that's what the shuyukh, they do, because the ulama differ. Do you read a book once or twice? Some say you read a book once, you never read it again. There's no time for that. There's too many books to read, so you read it one time, that's it. You read it properly. And some ulama say you read it more than once. They have different views. But what you do though, when you read it, you don't have to reread it. You just read the benefits. So some people do, they read the whole book again. You don't waste your time, because you already read it. So what you do is you just open your book and say, okay, fine. So you forgot something, so just 1 second, they're all here, and a page number references. And so when you're preparing a khutbah or something, you just open that kitab, and you have all the sources there. But today with the computer, it's even easier. I mean, if you find fa'idas, just throw in there. And even the same thing with any books you're reading. So that's one strategy. Other strategies, you have a separate notebook, and you write it from there. Like for example, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen will do that. So if you read Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, he has some books, Mukhtasar Zad Ma'ad, Mukhtasar of Fawaid, or it's a Fawaid or Mukhtasar of Zad Ma'ad, I'lam Muqi'een, and Turuq al-Hukumiyya. So you've probably seen Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, these are his notebooks. So he will sit down, the day he puts in the front cover, what year he wrote it, who he's sitting with, like a group of students or shuyukh, they sit down every week and they read that book. When they're reading it, they're writing the page number. He writes the fa'idah, page this. He said this, Ibn Qayyim said this. So it's like as if the shaykh's all books. So why? He's doing that, so all the benefits are there. And sometimes if you see that, you can see when the shaykh brings benefits, you see it's from there. And the same, he's from his notebook. He said this because he took it from there. So that shows you how Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, there's also one shaykh who wrote a book, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, and how he studied. Right? And he shows you. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen had a system. He didn't read just blind. He reads Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, Sa'di properly. And then when you see, when he teaches, he just summarized everything as if he's just telling you what they said, but his own way. He has a unique way of doing it. So he took these books and he made his own benefit from it. So that's what we can learn from that. Otherwise, everyone's path is different. Everyone has a different way of doing it. All this is wasail. Some brothers, they get stuck in the wasail. Al-ibratu bil-ghaya. It doesn't matter how you did it. What's the benefit? The ilm. So somebody's asking which way, the back or the front. Yeah, you put it where you put it. Some people like it on the side. Some people don't do that. So don't worry too much about the wasail, because then what's the point? Do you learn it? Do you get the benefit? Because one shaykh might have a run. Some say don't put it on. Some say put in between. Some say don't do that. Some say use pen. Some say use don't use pen. They have all the different views. So all the ulama have their views. One is more important for us. What are you getting out of the book? So that's very important, as we'll see. It's not about how you did it, but more important, how is it going to help you get to where you want to go? So I highly recommend طالب علم والكتب of Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh. If you want more details, he talks about some of those general practices. It's in English. Al-Ibana, they translated that some years ago. And also try your best when you're writing and you're reading, you have to write some notes. And some people like to type, right? Their notes, that's okay too. Right? Some will say, what about tablet versus a notebook? It's okay, don't worry, right? Some people come and say, what's this? Some shuyukh have tablets too, okay? It's not a problem. It's not gonna change. But some people like the old school, some people like the new. But what's more important is, are you writing? That one you can't say. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example, he told us, Hadith Anas, قيد الكتاب قيد العلم بالكتابة. Secure the knowledge by writing it. So one thing you're not supposed to do, you're not supposed to read without writing, or attend a class without writing. That's not, the talib ilm shouldn't do that. Try your best to write it, even if it's just summary of what you're hearing. That's the best. And the reason is because later, as we said, you'll be able to benefit from what you learn, or also encourage you some questions you want to look into. For example, the teacher mentions something, and you're thinking, that's a good point, I'm going to research that. Or maybe the teacher said someone could look at that or find this, and you write it down. So it gives you also the encouragement, but also it keeps you from distraction. If you notice that, if you sit in a class without pen, you're looking everywhere. Right? So sometimes this is not good, right? You want to be focused in the class, at least have something to focus you. But also sometimes what you notice is if you don't write down, you may also have a benefit. Years later you need it, you don't have it. And how many times that happens? You heard something and it's gone, right? You lost it, you lost a file, you lost a notebook, you're thinking, subhanAllah, where was that benefit? And then you're looking for it and you can't find it. So sometimes what happens when you write in the notes, you can benefit others from it, by way of it, in a way that you wouldn't do it if you didn't write down. So inshallah we'll stop with this much. And the Shaykh's advice, he continues, right? Later we'll talk about next week inshallah. But the practical element of this, part of it is talking about adab. And there are many books on adab, and the Shaykh's going to talk about after this, he's going to talk about the qira of kutub, and certain list of books that are recommended or references. Right? If you don't have any quick questions, inshallah, we'll take it. Yes, brother.
Is there any principles with the Salaf mentioned about how much you should write down from a page?
So Sheikh Salah Jabal says how much to write from the page. Sheikh Salah talks about it. Some scholars, they had different ways of doing it. And sometimes what they will do, they will put the benefits, because they had an old system. They have a metin, they have hashi, right? So that was the hashi, that was the old way of doing it. You have a metin, wal sharh, wal hawashi. That was the old way. So some of them, they put the metin in the middle, then that sharh on the edge, and hawashi on the other. Some they put a triangle. He talks about these different ways. But what happens, you put enough on the page, you can benefit from it, and sometimes less is more. So because you want to memorize it, it's another benefit. What's the point of writing it? For hifz. You want to memorize it so there's two types of hifz, right? Writing it and memorizing it. But the memorization comes from another book. And the proof of that, Abdul ibn As. He is one of the only Sahaba who used to write time Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? In his own lifetime. And why does he write it? He said to help him memorizing it. Hence Abu Hurairah never wrote on anything. So he knows so many hadith, has the most, but Abdullah ibn As had some that he didn't have. Because he said he used to write, but we didn't used to write. So writing enough to memorize. But the thing is, if you notice, if you write less on the page, and some like to use different colors, it's easy to see the spacing and to memorize it. Too much cramped together, you can't read it. Also to write clearly, as we're going to come to, not very small text. Because later you don't know what you wrote, right? And then you can't memorize. So the better to write in a way that suits you to memorize it. And some people like to write it in just a clear text, right? What the benefit is. And some basics too, we said it before. At the very least, what you're writing down is, what's the benefit, the fa'idah, who said it, the qa'in, and the masdar, where did you get it from? That's the very least. Right? Because later on you can take down, you can put it in a benefit, right? Share with others. Wallahu a'lam. Yes, brother.
Nowadays you said we can record lessons, but you have to ask the consent of the person who's
Yes, if you come to a class you want to record, you should ask the teacher if he permits recording it. If he says no, then you can't. Because the teacher has the right, it's idhan, he has to get his idhan, because he's the one who's giving knowledge. At the same time, he might not want that class to be shared with others. But today, most classes, right, the public classes, they're being recorded already. So that part is taken away. Before, you had to record it. Or you have to come record. So for example, we said it before, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah. He's a sign when it comes to signs of Allah when it comes to ilm. He recorded the lessons himself. Okay, we have to look at his biography. Shaykh Uthaymin, what's beautiful about him, he's already thinking down the line, the future. So when he has the classes, he has the recorder. And if you want to come Q&A, you have to bring the recorder. And if there's no Q&A, no, he's not going to do. He's going to cut your time, or he's not going to give you it, because he said enough for you. He said for the whole ummah. So he said that Shaykh Uthaymin was something unique. Other sheikhs, they didn't used to do that. He embraced the technology and he used to record it, because every single class of his and every book we have today, all prints. All his classes have been transcribed and printed. He's only sheikh of our time, contemporary sheikhs. Every single one of his tapes, lecture, because most of it he recorded himself. So even they mentioned when it comes to Fatawa Nu' ala Darb, one day used to come to his house in Qasim to do the Q&A. So what happened was, obviously the guy comes with the big machine that time to do the Q&A, and they broke. And Sheikh said, 1 second, he went to his closet, or he got a big one. Here you go. replacement. So how did you have that? He said, I already knew it was going to happen. So I told the other guy to bring me one. Look at that. This is the kind of sheikhs we need to be. So the sheikh's recording. Imagine me and you. We should take the recording benefit. But what we should be also doing is write it down the notes, and what you missed, you get from the recording. And some sheikhs, they don't let you record. That's why you have to learn how to write, because later you have to. And some sheikhs may be faster than others, so you have to practice both. But if you want to record and it doesn't allow, you have to seek permission. And that's the